She goes, how come? I said, that watch dies just like that, just a snap of a finger. And she said, I think you're a natural healer. And I said, well, you know, I think I am too, because I have a great grandmother that did faith healing. And so I explored what that looked like, and I took classes to be a Reiki master, which is 3 classes in Reiki. And that's an energy healing modality that you can do in person or from distance. And I also did a 2-year shamanic apprenticeship. The first year when I did this apprenticeship, the first year you focus on healing yourself, because unless you're going to heal yourself, you can't heal other people. The second year, our last class was, we had people come in from the community, and I think there were 6 of us that were learning, and so each of us had 3 people. And it was very interesting because the people that came to me, nobody was assigned to any one person. Some people came up and as one went downstairs, because we were up in a loft in a bookstore that sold alternative healing kinds of books. So one would come up the loft, one would go down, one would go down, one would come up. And it was interesting, the people that came to me needed me. And there was a girl in another corner, her name is Shiloh, and her normal job is to interpret for the deaf via screen. And when we got done, we got together and we talked about our experience. And Shiloh said, you know, I thought I was channeling the whole time. And I said, well, Shiloh, this is what you do for a living. You are channeling because you're interpreting between the deaf and the hearing. She goes, oh, I never thought about it that way. I said, I could have never helped the people you were helping. And she looked at me and she said, Teresa, I could have never helped the people that you were helping. And I said, isn't it interesting that the people that needed the certain person got to the right person? So Vanessa does healing work, I do healing work. There are plenty of us that do healing type work, but every person does things a little differently, and we all have our own strengths and weaknesses. And in fact, one of the guys that came to me, I met him in another class, and I knew a little bit about his background. His dad is a medical doctor, and he would always eat clean. And I felt something in his gut area. I go, what's going on in your stomach area? He said, you can feel that? I said, yes. He said, I ate junk yesterday and you can feel that. I said, oh yeah, I can feel that energy that doesn't need to be there. And so I drew that out, and he was totally amazed at how fast I could figure that out for him. So I started this because I do all these healing work stuff, and I said it has to get out to the people. And so I'm starting this podcast on grief and loss because there's so much of it in our society. Grief and loss is just not about death. It's also about the little traumas, getting passed over in your family. Maybe there was a sibling that was a more favorite sibling. The angst of being employed, laid off, fired, maybe retired. There's so many things. Toxic relationships. You may be finding the same type of person, different name, different location, same type of dysfunction. What I have found is people that are raised in a certain way. When I was in seminary, there was a film that somebody showed us, and it was a family that the dad was an alcoholic, and I don't think mom was emotionally present. And so these kids are playing around as kids, and they go, oh, I'm never going to be like this. 10, 20 years later, they're together as adults, and the oldest son is now an alcoholic. And so you repeat the patterns that you see because this is your normal, whether it's normal or not. And so we find people that live into that story that we have. Addictions, drugs, alcohol, TV, cell phones. I know I'm guilty with cell phones this time, but I was a roommate with somebody who was an alcoholic. I lived downstairs, he was upstairs on the golf course. And I thought, this is interesting. Then his mother came to visit. Now he's just as bad as he is, drinking all the time. And I'm like, this is so dysfunctional. He had shared with me, he said, Teresa, my dad was an optometrist and my mom was a nurse, and we always had parties like every weekend along the river. And so he learned about drinking and not drinking. So loss of status is also another thing. Whether you had great health maybe once upon a time, and now maybe you take prescription drugs and you're like, yeah, you know, it's like now we're struggling. Or you had a great job and now you don't. Spiritual crisis, when you don't feel aligned with your creator, whoever that is. You sense something is out of balance. Can't quite put a finger on it. It could be generational issues. It could be things from way past. My great-grandma Moser, in the old country, she had 10 children. 8 died there. Came to the United States, had another 6. So 8 died in the old country, 8 lived here. So 16 kids she birthed. So I chose not to have children this lifetime because I grew up with all kinds of health issues. And I said, I don't want to do that, but maybe I don't want to repeat that cycle. Not that I would have 16 kids, but is there something in the gene pool that would have me lose children? So I said, I don't want to do that. So we're going to transition to read for some excerpts from my book, Heal the Healer, A Woman's Transformation Through Christian Shamanism and the Power Spirit. Our lives are not always filled with ease. My mom noticed I had issues breathing and swallowing. When I was around 5 months old, my mother was very concerned. She took me to a medical doctor, and many appointments later, closer to age 2, I was diagnosed with epilepsy. Now I was born in 1965, so keep that in mind. So epilepsy, according to the Epilepsy Foundation of America, epilepsy is sometimes referred to as a seizure disorder. It's a diverse group of neurological disorders of varying types and severities that are characterized by recurring seizures. When a person has had 2 or more seizures in more than 24 hours apart, that have not been provoked by specific events such as a stroke, brain injury, infection, fever, or fluctuations in blood sugar, they are considered to have epilepsy. A person can also be diagnosed with epilepsy if they have 1 or more unprovoked seizures and the probability of future seizures. We don't always get what we want when we want it. We have our issues, some have medical issues, while some have dealt with abuse or the tragic loss of a parent or their children. We're at a young age. So whatever the reason you're here, welcome. Welcome to A Story of Truth and Hope. My intention with this book is always to encourage you that whatever you're going through, you are not alone. As my mother often recounted, the early months of my life in 1966 were shadowed by a health crisis that left her grappling with profound fear and uncertainty. At just 5 months old, I struggled with symptoms that battered both my family and the doctors, labored breathing and difficulty swallowing, which seemed to worsen by the day. The medical landscape during that time was vastly different from today, marked by limitations. Mid-20th century science in the slow pace of technological advancements in healthcare. Reflecting on this period, my mother often spoke of the dual forces of hope and despair that battled within her. Being a mother means facing your greatest fears every day, she would say, her eyes reflecting the depth of her past anxieties. The ordeal we went through was not just a trial of physical endurance for me, but an emotional and spiritual crucible for me. It highlighted the stark realities of medical care at the time, its power to give life and its devastating limitations. This chapter of our lives, while filled with fear and uncertainty, was also a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, particularly the maternal spirit, which shaped my mother's character, forging the strength and resolve that she carried throughout her life. The advancements in medical science since then have transformed healthcare, turning once many fatal diseases into treatable conditions. Yet the memories of those early, uncertain days remain a powerful reminder of how far we have come and the gratitude we owe to the relentless progress of medical science. In integrative medicine, this story can inspire a holistic approach that combines spiritual well-being with physical and emotional care. It underscores the potential for spiritual practices rooted in personal faith to contribute to healing and well-being, complementing medical treatments by fostering an environment of hope and resilience. The tale of Daniel in the lion's den transcends its ancient origins, offering timeless insights into the nature of faith and overcoming adversity. It is a narrative that encourages us to face our challenges with courage, hold steadfast in our convictions, and remain open to the miracles that faith in a higher power can bring, echoing the principles of Christian shamanism and fostering healing and protection through divine connection. In the realm of Christian shamanism, we find that the manifestation of spiritual gifts, particularly those related to healing, are deeply intertwined with the workings of the Holy Spirit. As elucidated in 1 Corinthians 12, we are reminded of the diverse array of gifts bestowed upon believers, all originating from the same divine source. Among these gifts, healing holds a prominent place alongside wise counsel, clear understanding, and simple trust. Just as God's Spirit imparts various expressions of power, so too does it inspire the ability to heal the sick, a gift that transcends physical boundaries to touch the soul. We all have a purpose, a contract with the divine to fulfill certain tasks during our time on earth. Yet, clarity often eludes us, and we find ourselves grappling with questions about our purpose and place in the world. In these moments, it's essential to seek guidance and ask questions without fear of judgment or ridicule. Every question is an opportunity for growth and understanding. Life is replete with choices, each with its own set of consequences, whether favorable or otherwise. It's a lesson I've learned over time, guiding me to my ultimate calling as a pain relief advisor. Although I possess the ability to lay hands on individuals and facilitate healing, I attribute this gift to universal energy rather than personal prowess. It's a difficult concept to articulate, but witnessing me in action often makes it clear. Embedded in our existence is a divine purpose waiting to be fulfilled. We are here not only to learn, but also to teach others through our actions. Whether we serve as positive or negative examples hinges on our attitudes and behaviors toward ourselves and those around us. Recognizing our divine origins enables us to embrace our inherent divinity, even if it challenges the expectations of our familial roles. By acknowledging our individual growth and embracing change, we can navigate the complexities of life with grace and authenticity. Through my work as an ordained minister and healer, I have witnessed the transformative power of faith and spirituality in the process of healing. I have learned that true healing goes beyond the physical realm. It encompasses the mind, body, and spirit in a holistic journey toward wholeness. Today, I am grateful for the challenges I have faced and the lessons I have learned along the way. As I continue on this journey, I'm reminded of the words of Jesus, "If you believe, you will receive whatever you ask for in prayer." These words serve as a beacon of hope, reminding me that even in the midst of adversity, faith has the power to transform and help life. At this time, I'm going to have Vanessa, who's sitting here beside me patiently, who's also helping me with this podcast. Her daughter had seizures when she was growing up, and so I want you to talk about that, and then also your experience with your dad with Agent Orange. So if you can do that for us, since we only have one mic, I'm just going to let you talk.
All right, thank you and welcome everybody. I'm excited to be here with Teresa. I'm Vanessa Nordstrom with Find Your Tribe Health and Wellness, and I'm an energy healer, and I've had quite the path as well. Been on quite a journey and working with divine energy to really help people work through all sorts of things, trapped emotions, imbalances, grief, trauma, disconnections in the body, so many other things. And I echo many of the things that Teresa read in the book. That's very forward thinking and where I'm at as well. So I'm excited for you guys to engage with the book and really kind of dive into it more deeply on your own time. So as Teresa had mentioned, our daughter, I have 2 kids. I'm married and have 2 kids and 2 dogs. And our daughter, when she was 3, actually experienced an MMR vaccine injury. So at 3 years old, about a month later, her body started having seizures, and it was her first one at daycare. So I rushed, downpouring for 100 miles an hour, trying to get to daycare as fast as I could, leaving work. And everything was just chaos, and we had no idea what was going on, and it was futile. It felt like it was the end of the world. No idea, no answers, nothing made sense. And I had, gone through a lot of trauma and grief prior, growing up. As Teresa had mentioned, I'll also get to this story, but I had a parent, my father was in Vietnam, he was a Vietnam veteran who was exposed to Agent Orange, and so we went through a lot of trauma there growing up. And so it kind of kick-started or triggered another traumatic event in my life. I had others, but these were 2 very big prominent ones within my life. And so we engaged with a neurologist. That one didn't really give us very profound answers. And then we journeyed on to Mayo Clinic and found a lot of answers. And that neurologist gave us a lot of insight and knowledge. And we decided to follow the journey of more holistic healing and using nutrition. So we did a low glycemic ketogenic diet to help balance the ketones that were in our brain, so that it would reduce the misfires and neural connections. We also reduced sugar to help balance the nervous system and keep the stress levels low. So lots of learnings. and really kind of looking at it as, there's no doubt in our mind. We set the intention that she was going to heal. Just a side note, I grew up, my mom was Christian Science, and so we were always told, like, the body heals itself. And so my mom, if we got hurt when we were younger, she would just say to yourself, I'm God's perfect child. And we'd be like, okay, do that. And we'd repeat it and we'd feel fine most of the time. My dad was a Buddhist and also followed Native American spirituality. So we had a deep, profound understanding of a lot of this stuff. But we kind of used a balance of all of these different pathways. And going back to the end of the neurologist, she said, this is probably going to last about 10 years, and there's a 90% chance that she'll grow out of this epilepsy. And we were like, very interesting. Fast forward 10 years, she did grow out of it. The efficacy of the vaccine wore off, and the body was able to, release and help process. We did a whole bunch of holistic work as well, and worked to release and detox, and did a lot of that stuff. But along with the epilepsy, she also had emotional behavioral disorder and anxiety, and it was just the most profound experience. I became this huge advocate, learning everything about epilepsy, becoming an advocate for my daughter at school, and helping her help other kids in her class understand what happens when you have emotional behavioral disorder and anxiety. You might have seizures at school, and what does that look like? And just completely was right by my daughter's side. But it was a lot of emotion and grief to hold as a parent. And so I kind of just was navigating through all of this, and our family was navigating through it, and had many hardships to bear, but eventually we conquered that piece and felt like, we could move forward. And come to, 2018, I started having a couple things where I had experienced the need for surgeries, and my body wasn't healing. And I'm like, what's going on? And that's where I really started to engage and understand there's more to the healing process than physical. And so as I speak to people all the time, the healing process is not just physical, it's physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, as Teresa talked about in her book. And a lot of times we're just looking at that 25% and wondering why we can't fully heal. And you're leaving that other 75% on the table. So that's when I really engaged in my journey, and things have, profoundly leaped forward, and now the healing process is like quick and immense most of the time. It's amazing. But I wish I had all these skills that I have now that kind of connected with me and engaged. It would have been a totally different experience. And I go back even further in history, talking to the experience growing up as a child of a Vietnam veteran. My dad had OCD, paranoia, PTSD, and so as children, my sister and I experienced a lot of, extreme paranoia as far as, where are you? Where's Vanessa? Where's my sister? We're gonna have to move. We moved 27 times by the time I was 18 because my dad was so paranoid that someone was gonna break in, or there was some kind of, engagement with management, and we just kept moving. I've actually moved 42 times now. And my current home I've stayed in the longest for 19 years, which is pretty crazy. But I look back at all of those experiences, and it modeled us. It created who we were, and it created these trapped emotions, and it created imbalances, and it created, perceptions and perspectives and belief systems that carried into adulthood. And then at 18, on top of the experience we had as children, we lost our dad on Father's Day. It was actually 30 years ago on June 18th. And the experience of, all the things we were dealing with as children, and then losing a father at 18, 5 days after graduation on Father's Day, was immense grief. And, the things that we went through, I experienced. You can see down below kind of the conventional wisdom of the grief process, and there's so many aspects to it. We have shock and denial we experience, and pain and guilt, and anger and bargaining, and depression. we kind of start making our way up in the upward turn and making, reconstruction and working through things, and acceptance and hope starts to become more profound. But since I've been in the emotional, spiritual aspect of healing, there's so much more to it. When we look at anger and you define it more deeply, it's really about not getting to, it's about repressed anger is like trapped frustrations. And when they're not resolved and tended to, they become this, profound, higher level anger. And then the body starts seeking ways to find dopamine, and it creates a heart-seeking addiction. So then we all of a sudden experience things like negative emotions or addiction to alcohol and tobacco and drugs and casinos and whatever the case may be. And really what the body is trying to do is create that dopamine experience that creates love. The greatest dopamine experience we have as humans is our mother's hug. And when we experience grief and anger and all of those things, your body's just trying to get back to that. And it's kind of at a loss. It doesn't know where, all of this has come from, and you have stored emotions and stored imbalances, and it's just kind of like a wobbly board. It's just kind of hit with a wave and not sure how to traverse. And depression is when that anger continues to build, and then there's repressed sadness under there as well. And when it's not tended to, it just continues to escalate and build, and those become our more, it becomes more pronounced, and those become our go-to emotions. So, I could go into so many details around growing up with a father who had so many things going on, and we experienced a lot of trauma, but we also had excitement and adventure, and my dad cared so deeply for my sister and I. It was kind of like this yin and yang, this crazy balance, and I wouldn't give it up for anything. It was quite the adventure, and I learned so much, and now it's profound in my healing and my ability to help others. And, I wish I'd had all of my tools that I have now back when I was 18, and I could, help my dad, and I could help our family go through the process in kind of a different way. But it's all been part of the experience, and I'm really grateful and thankful. I can communicate with ancestors. I can communicate with my dad. I talk with my dad all the time now. I talk to my dad more than I did in high school, I'll tell you that. And there's just profound sense of just relaxed calmness now and peace. And I've helped my dad release a lot of things that he dealt with when he was alive, that he's been able to let go through his own journey, after moving on. And it's profound. It's been quite an experience, and I'm so thankful and grateful for it. So I don't have a ton of time, and I want to thank you guys for the opportunity to share and engage you with, just really challenging everyone to look at the experience of going through a grief process from a different lens, with a different perspective, and understanding that there's so much more to it. And there's a lot of supports out there that people are not seeing, and so, Teresa and I and many other healers and many other people out there that are kind of on that fringe and alternative side, we've got a lot of tools to help people through it. We want exposure, we want visibility, and we want you to know that you're not alone. And we're all humans. We all have grief. We all have traumas, and experiences are similar and different, all in the same, but we all go through it. So we should be very open and supporting each other. So I'll leave you with that and turn it back over to Teresa.
Most of this stuff is coming out of my book anyway, so I'm just going to read to you some things about shamanic work, because that's what this podcast. The introduction to shamanism came before I fully understood its depths. It was a profound healing experience that reshaped my future. This deeply shamanic journey allowed me to recover from lifelong health issues in ways that conventional medicine couldn't. It was a significant turning point that inspired me to dedicate my life to learn about shamanism and using it to help others heal. Now as a shamanic practitioner, I weave traditional healing practices with my academic background in cancer. Shamanism is an ancient, holistic healing tradition that taps into the interconnectedness of life, to address the spiritual, emotional, and physical aspects of health. My practices, which include journeying, soul retrieval, and energy clearing, aim to restore balance and facilitate deep healing. My journey is a testament to the power of alternative healing paths in modern therapy. Shamanic healing, often seen as complementary to medical and psychological interventions, offers a spiritual dimension to healing that is frequently overlooked in modern medicine. By integrating my shamanic expertise with my counseling skills, I offer a unique therapeutic approach that empowers individuals to navigate their own healing journeys, highlighting the ongoing relevance of shamanic practices in today's health landscape. But what exactly is shamanism? It is an ancient practice embedded in the spiritual and cultural traditions of the numerous indigenous peoples around the world. It centers on the belief in a deeply interconnected universe, where every element, be it human, animal, or natural feature, possesses a spiritual essence. Shamans, often revered as healers and spiritual leaders, act as intermediaries between the physical world and the spiritual realm. Their role is to maintain harmony within their community, providing guidance, healing, and wisdom. Through rituals and ceremonies, shamans navigate these spiritual landscapes to address the roots of physical or emotional distress. The healing practices of shamanism are holistic, focusing on the entire being rather than just the symptoms of disease or discomfort. This approach delves into the spiritual, emotional, and physical aspects of a person's life. Techniques such as journeying, where the shaman enters a trance-like state to travel the spiritual realm, soul retrieval, which involves reclaiming parts of the self lost through trauma, and energy clearing aimed at removing spiritual blockages are all employed to restore balance and health. In modern context, shamanism has found a place alongside more conventional medical and psychological therapies, often referred to as complementary or alternative medicine. While it remains rooted in traditional cultural contexts in regions like Siberia, the Amazon, and parts of Africa and North America, shamanism also influences holistic health movements worldwide. In urban settings and Western societies, elements of shamanic healing are increasingly integrated with modern therapeutic practices. This includes the use of shamanic drumming and meditation for mental health, incorporating nature-based therapies, and utilizing shamanic counseling sessions to address deep-seated emotional wounds. Today, the resurgence of interest in shamanic practices can be seen as part of a broader search for meaning and healing in a fast-paced, often disconnected modern world. Many people are drawn to shamanism for its profound spiritual significance and its emphasis on personal empowerment and self-discovery. As society grows more accepting of diverse healing modalities, shamanism continues to be a vital source of spiritual guidance and therapy for many, bridging ancient wisdom with the challenges of contemporary life and offering a path to a more harmonious and connected existence. Christian shamanism is an intriguing synthesis of traditional shamanic practices infused with Christian beliefs and values. This blend offers a unique pathway for individuals who seek to integrate their spiritual faith with holistic healing practices. Rooted in the ancient wisdom of shamanism and enriched by the spiritual depth of Christianity, this approach aims to provide more comprehensive and profound healing, connecting both the divine and the natural worlds in a harmonious therapeutic practice. At its core, Christian shamanism revolves around the belief that healing comes from a deep connection with the spiritual realm, a concept that is both ancient and universally found in shamanic traditions across the world. However, it diverges by framing these practices within the context of Christian theology, seeing Jesus Christ not only as a Savior, but also as a supreme healer, whose teachings can guide one in both spiritual and physical rejuvenation. This form of shamanism adopts traditional shamanic tools such as vision quests, meditative journeys, and energy healing, and contextualizes them within Christian symbolism and prayer, creating a rich tapestry of faith-led healing. In the realm of integrative medicine, Christian shamanism is used to promote faster and more complete healing by addressing the spiritual and emotional dimensions often overlooked in conventional medicine. Practitioners believe that by healing the spirit through prayer, meditation, and other spiritual practices, One can influence the physical body, potentially leading to quicker recovery and greater overall health. This approach is particularly appealing in settings where patients seek treatments that align with their religious beliefs, providing comfort and spiritual support alongside physical care. Christian shamanic healing practices might include guided spiritual journeys where patients led by a Christian shaman enter a trance-like state induced through prayer or biblical meditation to confront and heal from past traumas. This can be akin to the shamanic journey to retrieve parts of the soul lost due to emotional or physical distress, yet it is distinctly Christian in its invocation of Christ's presence and protection. Energy healing, another cornerstone of shamanic practice, is performed with an emphasis on the Holy Spirit's power. Practitioners may lay hands on the patient while invoking the Holy Spirit to channel healing energy directly to areas of physical or emotional pain. This method closely mirrors the Christian practice of laying on of hands, found in numerous biblical passages, thus weaving together both the shamanic and Christian healing traditions. In modern healthcare settings, Christian shamanism has found a place, particularly in the care of the terminally ill or those suffering from chronic diseases where conventional medicine often reaches its limits. Here, Christian shamanic practices provide patients not only with physical relief, but also with spiritual solace, offering a sense of peace and purpose that supports comprehensive care. Hospitals and hospices that embrace holistic approaches to health are increasingly open to including such spiritual therapies, recognizing the benefits of addressing patient needs through a broader, more integrated lens. As with any practice that blends spiritual traditions with healing, Christian shamanism requires sensitive and ethical practice. It is vital for practitioners to respect individual beliefs and boundaries, ensuring that the patients are comfortable with and consenting to the incorporation of the spiritual practices into their treatment plans. Moreover, practitioners must be well versed in both the theological and traditional shamanic aspects of their practice, ensuring they adhere to the ethical standards expected in both realms. Christian shamanism represents a fascinating convergence of old and new, offering a healing path that is deeply spiritual yet profoundly personal. For many, it provides a way to engage with their faith in a more dynamic and healing-oriented manner, finding solace in the belief that their spiritual and physical journeys are interconnected and overseen by a higher power. This chapter of integrative medicine continues to evolve, promising new insights and advancing the holistic treatment of both body and spirit. Do any of you have any questions about anything you may have experienced or witnessed here tonight, or want to have more answers to questions as to what I do? Yes, Lily. So the question is, what have I done to help myself heal from my husband's passing? Well, I listen to the Holy Spirit all the time. And I have done Reiki work on myself, and that's very healing. And I've led grief groups, and that's helpful to do that. I'm talking to YMCA's with their Forever Well program, and I'm leading workshops on healing the soul through grief and loss. And so as I do that, I relate stories about my late husband, which is quite healing for me while I'm trying to heal others also. So that's kind of what I'm doing for myself, and taking care of self. Self-care is really important no matter what you're doing. You have to take care of yourself so that you can take care of others. And as healers, I'm sure you do self-care work also, so yes. Every day, absolutely every day we have to do self-care. So, yes. So, does anyone want to share their story of grief and loss? I'm open to handing the mic out to others who might have a grief and loss story that might be helpful for others. No? Okay. So, I did a talk with Unity of Minneapolis last week online, and I was talking through my book, and I was also talking about shamanic work, and somebody here signed up for that, so I would like Michelle to come up and tell us what happened like, right, you told me a story right after we got done, and see if anything else has changed since then, but I would like for you to give testimony to that, if you don't mind.
It's very brave of her to give me a microphone. My name is Michelle. I worked with Teresa recently, and this was my first experience with Christian shamanism. Not my first experience with energy. And my experience was, I deal with significant joint pain from arthritis and injury. And I was really hoping to get relief from that. But what actually happened was I had tremendous sense of emotional relief from one session. And what I noticed specifically when I was laying on the table with Teresa working on me, I had what I felt like was an out-of-body experience. We were both very conscious and talking, but I could sense like my spirit, in a sense, over me and like outside of me, as if that's actually what Teresa was working on. And when we concluded, I almost felt giddy, which was, in a way I felt almost inappropriate. But it's a testament to how much emotional release I think I experienced during that session. So that was just a really interesting experience. And I have a question for you.
Yes.
How much emotional release do people need to go through to achieve physical relief?
That is a great question. I think it's all very individual because we don't know how much we're holding on to, but once it starts releasing, then you give yourself permission to release more. I don't know that we can put a timetable on that or whatever, because I have people sign up for 3 sessions, so that was just one session. I'll go back there. I said, she asked how long in between, and I said, well, things are going to change, so I would say once a month until we're done. And if you want to always renew that, you can always do that, but I wouldn't do more than once a month for shamanic work because the energy and things are going to change within your body, and it needs to integrate. When I was learning Reiki, our teacher said there's like a 3 or 4 week cleanse that happens. Like the first week is personal stuff, the second week is like community, and the third is like the world. And let me tell you, every day, whatever was on that schedule is what showed up that day to work with. I'm like, that was very impressive that everything was so laid out. And people will say, oh man, I got done with that and I feel like I'm going crazy. No, you're going through a cleansing process. So you're not crazy, you're going through a cleansing process, and you have to allow time for that to happen. Are there any other questions? Yes?
So when you're dealing with your clients,
I'm dealing with my clients.
you're helping your clients.
And I'm helping my clients.
Yeah. What tools do you give them for feedback to help with the process? Because if you're waiting a month to see you, there's a lot of integration.
Right.
So what feedback do you give them to
What feedback do I give them so they can keep moving forward in the way they need to? That's a really good question.
because they need support?
Yes, they need support. Well, Michelle, if you need support in between, you can always call me or text me or whatever. But I am here for them through the whole process. So if they want to call me or say, this is what's really going on, can you help me? Then I'll say, and then I'll ask some questions. Because since I don't live in their soul, I don't know what's going on. Because we all create stories. We all have stories of our lives. And I was talking to somebody on Saturday, and she said, I keep having these mental and emotional issues. And I'm like, well, you can really change your story if you really want to. You just have to start thinking differently. If that's what the error is in thinking, because you're in pain. What is the root of the problem? See, as a shaman, I want to get to the root of the problem. I had a guy come in and he said, Satan is really bothering me. So I asked his spirituality and he told me what it was. I told him what to do. I did the shamanic work. He called me the next day. He said it's all done. Great. Wonderful. I healed him in one session. Never got him back as a client. But then his wife comes in, and she has this story. My dad abused me, and my older stepsister who was older should have protected me. Well, maybe the stepsister is also getting abused, so you can't protect people if you're in that process too. You know, it's really hard to be there for somebody when you can't function in that arena. So I want to help people integrate whatever that is and give them the tools that they need. And it would be very individual because everybody has their own life story. Is that helpful? Any other questions? Yes, Chris.
I have a question for either or both of you. I
Okay.
heard Vanessa refer to it, but we probably both have the same experience. And I guess I think I have, but I don't know if I have. That's, tell me about what it means to you that you're communicating with your dad every day. What does that mean? How does that manifest to you?
So I'll give a little bit more context. When I work with people and I present and I educate, I like to talk first about how we're all energy. We're all electrical beings. And so when you think about that, our atoms are all made up of electrons, protons, neutrons, and every atom has 1.5 joules of electricity within it. Our body's 70 trillion atoms, and so there's a current. There's energy rolling through everything. Our bodies, all of this physical matter, everything is energy, and it just takes a different form, whether it's physical, it's gas, it's liquid, or it's speed of light. And so energy never changes, or never ends, let's say that, it never ends, it just changes shape or form. So when we understand that in the context of referring to speaking with my dad who's passed away, if the physical body is the carrier, it's just a carrier of our spirit, there's just a change in energy when someone passes. And so I am able to connect with my dad, I'm just tuning in. It's connecting with the divine energy. I'm just listening to my intuition and connecting and hearing my dad because I'm willfully wanting to do it. I'm trusting that I can do it. My intuition is tapped in. And it's, as simple as when we're kids, we're very tuned in. We don't let the beliefs kind of overtake us. And we're able to hone in on that energy. So it's a concept that's quite hard for many to grasp, but every single one of us are full of energy. We have our intuition. It's just about becoming realigned with that. And so, my dad will come in and ask me for help with, I've released a whole bunch of ancestral trapped patterns and emotions. I've released a whole bunch of things specifically for my dad, sickness, memory, energy, so that as he's journeying, he can continue his process with release of these things, and he can move forward.
Is this a voice you're receiving in your head?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what I've experienced.
Yep.
I've experienced hearing literally in my mind, hearing
Yep.
my mother's voice.
And don't discount that. That is intuition. That's download. That's information coming in. And a lot of times we're just like, oh, it's just my mind running a mile a minute. It's just random thoughts. And it's like, no, the more you tune in and listen and kind of slow your pace down. I'm a very different person than I was when I was a kid. My dad always told me to slow down, stop the rat race. You're all over the place. And I was kind of just like a wild woo all the time. And I honed it in and stopped and paused and listened. And that's kind of what meditation does for us. It puts us in that theta state. And theta is where we heal. And so if society was able to kind of hone that in, we can all do it. And hearing that or seeing that vision or smelling the things, that are triggering memories, all of those are all part of our senses. We go way beyond the 5 basic senses. There's over 20 at least. And people just kind of hone them in like you would a sport or an activity or an art. And, it's just about practice and focus and guidance and setting the intention that you or this is what I'm gonna do, this is what I'm focusing on. So yeah, those things, those thoughts or perceptions of like hearing stuff, that is connection, that's communication. And take it for value. it's very meaningful. The more you tune into those things, the more you listen to those messages, the more your life aligns and gets less chaotic and more calm. Any other questions or conversation? Okay.
First of all, thank you all for showing up. This is awesome. Vanessa Nordstrom for being my partner. This is lovely. I'm giving our door prizes. Michelle Chartier for getting a testimony. Trudy Mace for Young Living Essential Oils. Tony Thorne for videoing me, and Crystals for door prizes. Derek Officer, you've been good at the registration table. And if you would like to buy a book, I've got books for sale. I have the capability to take all kinds of information from you. So anyway, so go right ahead and enjoy the time and get food or drink or whatever. So these foods are, yes, Miss Lily.
And what would an ideal referral be? Referral.
Women ages 55 to 70 going through grief and loss process. That's my ideal client. That doesn't mean I can't help others. So yes, that would be my ideal client.
How do you in your profession deal with, I can't think of the term, not when you're addicted, but, yeah, codependence. Like my mom was an alcoholic and had severe emotional depression, severe emotional illness. We all grew up with that. And while I don't feel unhealthy, I also recognize my own humanity. How do you deal with codependence? Or do you deal with codependence in your profession?
Yes, I would ask you a lot of questions to get to the root of the problem. You know, because
What
how
do
did
you
that?
think there's a problem?
Well, how did it affect you? Is probably one of
Yeah,
the first.
that's
You know, I mean, I want to get you to talking. So how did that affect you? What happened in your life, or what was the family dynamic when you were growing up, and what did you see? And you know, those kinds of questions are what I'm going to start with, and then we're going to talk about how I can help you further.
I'm the yin to that. I'm very opposite.
That's okay.
Yeah.
We each have our own style.
So I use codes. I use belief code, body code, emotion code, and I help the body release trapped emotions, associated imbalances, and how I do it is I use muscle testing to communicate with the subconscious. And so there's a wonderful app, but I can identify any question and talk with your subconscious. So mine, I even have people that are poker faces that won't say anything in my sessions. Mine's very different from like talk therapy or getting into the details. And so I'm just strictly communicating with the subconscious, which likes to be very efficient and effective and release things very quickly. And I muscle test and connecting with someone's energy via proxy, and then I'm just clearing. I identify what it is, and I'm taking notes and just clearing and clearing and clearing and clearing. The subconscious is doing all the talking. The person from the conscious side will sometimes jump in and be like, whoa, like, well, what? That doesn't make sense. And I'm like, well, it's playing in the subconscious reel and it's driving your true actions. And so I use that, and I also use frequencies and a lot of frequency tools to help the body do its own innate healing. And so I can do distance as well. I can help somebody in Australia. It doesn't really matter where you're at. It's quantum physics. So, you know, it's just a very different approach. And there's so many modalities to help people do this kind of healing. And so if you're someone that really wants to do a lot of talking, there's definitely the outlets, and Teresa's a wonderful person to do that. If you're someone that likes to do talking, but you really are like, I want to just, you know, clear these things pretty fast and furious, codes is a great way to go. And I would also add on top from the question before, like, we're all layers, we're all onions, and there's many layers. And the body, you know, can release a pain immediately with a session, And sometimes it does take multiple sessions. And we're like, also, it's like the game of pickup sticks. Sometimes you get those top layers out of the way, and then all of a sudden you get to that underside stick, and then all of a sudden that's like the kingpin. That's the one that really releases a whole bunch of stuff, and then you're having like huge transformations and shifts and things. So it's all, it varies by person, it varies by situation or focus that you have. But yeah, it's, there's a ton of opportunities to help release. It can be somatic therapy, it can be dance, it can be, meditation, it can be all sorts of ways. These are, couples and ways that we do it. But it's about really kind of focusing in and aligning with your true self and listening to your intuition and being ready to do the work. Because it does sometimes get ugly. It can, it can be headache, it can be fatigue, it can look like a cold. When I started really working on this, I actually did the forgiveness work, and I released it for 30 people in one night. And the next day was Christmas Eve, and we were hosting, and everyone thought I had COVID, and I really just kicked my own butt, releasing way too much at once. So when she talked about, sometimes taking that month to integrate and wait and kind of process through, if it's big stuff, your body, it will tell us, via subconscious what it needs, and we kind of just roll with those innate needs that people have. Yeah, we use our intuition and focus on what every person's need is. It's very different for everybody.
You find codependence to be a big part of your experience?
Yeah, that goes back to the heart-seeking addictions. If you're seeking mom's dopamine hug and you're not getting it, and you're resorting to other actions because you have repressed anger or really deep sadness because that repressed anger wasn't resolved, it wasn't worked through, it wasn't released, then you're going to seek these heart-seeking addictions. Sometimes it's workaholics, sometimes it's exercise fanatics. It's just about this compulsive need to hit that dopamine, because you need that. We are all humans that need connection, and dopamine is that most powerful drug. And so addictions are that format, and usually an addiction is like a 15-second dopamine hit, and then you gotta get it again, and that's why it's an addiction. So, yeah, those are there's many easy ways to work through it. It sounds crazy, but you can definitely work through it and help release that stuff and let the body move forward and release those addictions.
While we're in a session with others, like to protect our offering with so many clients and so many different energies and what they're bringing in.
Yeah.
And some of it can actually be actionable.
Oh, yeah.
So when you're done working with clients, how do you like
Would not take on their energy.
What do you do afterwards?
Yeah.
Take care of yourself.
Yeah, that's A1A, one of the most important things. When you're helping other people do their work, you protect your energy, you set boundaries, you set intentions. For me, I state I'm a divine spiritual being, having a divine spiritual experience, and I'm infinitely connected to Source. Nothing can come in without my permission, and nothing can leave without my permission. I clear and return energy to sender. I even do that if I'm driving down the road and someone, returns some pretty nasty energy, I send it right back. I don't want that. But when I'm working with clients, after every session, I do an energy clearing as well physically. So I do clear, and I clear the energy this way, and I cut any contracts, agreements, hexes, curses, anything. And I will say, even the subconscious is unbeknownst. I had a client a couple weeks ago when I was doing a spinal flow retreat, and I opened up the door with comfort, talking about inner child stuff, and their subconscious did a spiritual attack on me and a psychic attack. And that night I had nightmares and I had all sorts of stuff coming after me at night. It was really bad, and I had to do a lot of cleansing and clearing. I used sage. I cleared the air in my whole house. I cleared everything. But it's very profound that you are very, just as a surgeon washes their hands for every patient and clearing the germs, we're doing the same thing when we're cleansing and clearing energy, because every single one of us carries our, innate patterns of energy and things that are going on and traumas. And if you don't, having some of these crystals in your pocket also is a great way to help protect the energy and protect your space. And it's mostly about setting the intentions. Like, I don't allow other people's stuff to come in and affect me. You also have to think about not just working with clients, but like social media, the music we listen to, the movies we watch, the shows, the everything, all the things that go into producing the show or the movie you're watching, coming from every producer and every actor and every actress, all of their emotions are all pouring into that. And you think about when you watch a show, you kind of get hooked, right? It's because you kind of feel like you're part of it, and it's those emotions that are coming at you from them.
I always make sure I have good sleep hygiene, so I always turn off all electronics an hour ahead of bed. I also take some supplements. One of them is magnesium. It helps the heart as well as helps you relax. So I take those about an hour before I go to bed, and I read, or whatever I need to do to straighten up. So that way I can wind my body down. Because if I'm sitting behind social media and all that stuff, it affects the brain, and the brain is going to go a bazillion miles an hour, and you need to relax. But you were asking, how do we not take on that energy? Well, when I was taking Reiki classes, they do something called an attunement. And so in this attunement process, they teach you how to just keep your energy and not take on theirs. And so I instinctively know how to do that, and I always zip people up when I'm done with them, so that way their energy stays there, and so they're not getting off the bed going, I don't know what to do. When I was getting training, my teacher said, she said, we went to this Reiki thing down in Minneapolis, because I was getting training up in Park Rapids, and she said, the person I was with, she said, I don't remember how to drive. And Jeannie said to the lady that was with her, she said, let's just sit here and drive for a minute, because that's what it took, so they could actually drive somewhere and get somewhere. It's like, because some of this energy kind of can feel woo-woo at times, and so we really want to make sure that we ground ourselves before we leave, or before our client leaves, or whatever, however the case may be. So, yes. Are there any other questions or anything? It's open forum. Can I heal chronic disease? I can probably help some of that. Okay. So my late husband had diabetes. He got diabetic neuropathy. I could touch his hands and his feet, and those pains would go away for a month or two at a time. I can't take care of the diabetes. I can't take care of the root cause, but I could take care of those symptoms. So sometimes, like if you have cancer, you want to deal with the pain. And then I think when people live in constant pain, that's all they think about is, I am in so much pain. And they just can't function normally. But if I can work with them, a lot of times that pain will dissipate for a long time. I touched a lady when I lived in Bismarck. I was in a mall, and this lady had migraine headaches. I touched her, and the headaches went away. And one of her friends came in later in the mall. She goes, oh, I heard about you. She goes, my friend had migraine. She hasn't had any since. I'm like, awesome. Because the energy, it's all universal life force energy. So the energy goes where it needs to help heal a person. So whatever that is, you might say, I have pain here in one part. It may not be that's where the origination is. I went to church, several years ago, and one of my dad's cousins, my dad was alive at the time, and Jerry was one of his first cousins. It was their grandmother that was a faith healer. So Jerry said to me once, he goes, my back hurts so bad. He goes, I have such pain in my back. I said, what did you do? He goes, nothing. Like, I didn't twist wrong, I didn't do anything wrong. I walked away and I said, I bet he has cancer. 6 or 8 weeks later, I'm talking to him again. Hi, Jerry, how are you doing? I was diagnosed with cancer, and I'm like, why did I know that? That was so weird. My dad had a cousin, Roger, and he said, and Roger died, and he goes, it's interesting. He goes, a couple weeks ago, I saw him, and I saw this black cast around him. And I said, oh, Dad, you can see yours. He has no idea what it was. He's like, whatever. I'm like, yeah, you got some of these healing gifts too, but he didn't ever recognize that. But it's like, yeah, I feel energy. I don't necessarily see the cast and the colors that my dad did, but I'm like, this is real stuff, and it really helps people that want to move forward, to help them move forward.
Just a couple things. So, pain in itself is the communicator. It's the flag. It's telling your body, hey, we got a problem. This is like, whatever pain you have going on is the indicator that it needs something resolved. And everything is transmitted and becomes a physical thing because of our emotions. And so when those emotions are packed in the back and not, brought to the forefront and dealt with and kind of processed through and able to release, they settle into the body as a weakness, and that becomes our traumas, our disconnections, our imbalances and diseases and illnesses. And so when you speak to, can we, work with chronic illness, that's what I'm doing all the time, is just kind of working with that divine energy and helping the person's body do its own innate healing by identifying what are the root causes, the emotions that are trapped. It could be from trauma from, birth. It could be trauma from previous life. It could be trauma from an inherited maternal or paternal pattern. Miasms is what those are called, sickness memories. And we can identify, I can identify those things that are going on in the body and help the person then get those out of the way so that it can start doing those innate healing. I have multiple people that I'm working with cancer, and each cancer has its own resonance, its own reasoning. There's like a theme going on, and I'm working with someone that just retired, and all of a sudden they got leukemia. Leukemia is tied to this theme of around, I don't know what my life purpose is. I'm not exactly sure what my identity is. This person was very locked into their work, and then retirement hits, and you're like, okay, who am I? What's my purpose in this life? What am I supposed to be doing? And it didn't kind of come to fruition, and all of a sudden it hit him like a freight train, and it was stage 4 leukemia. And I worked on that person, and they had, I worked on them for 3.5 hours, and there was profound stuff coming up from childhood, from family stuff, from work stuff, from life, from inherited, and it was a lot of emotions. And I'm hoping that, this person has been in the hospital for 53 days and came out and is now cancer-free, but there's still continued process and healing in this situation, and so there's a need for more release and things like that. But it's all about pain being the communicator, listen to it, and identify what are those root causes by doing these different techniques, these modalities. These healing energies are here to work with your energy, and it's profound when you start kind of tuning into all of that.
It's also looking at yourself. And it's, okay, what affirmations do you need for that? Because the emotions are also attached to our body. So like your liver is angry. So if you have a lot of anger, that's going to affect your liver. Not only does it affect your liver, it also affects certain parts of the body as well.
As long as grief,
So, yeah.
respiratory bronchitis or asthma or any of that, heavy grief,
And the biggest thing is somewhere, it could possibly be somewhere in your lifetime, you didn't have that belief that you were worthy enough. And when you have that creates more. So, and like she was saying, you want to kind of go back. Sometimes it's that inner child. Sometimes it could be when you were 16 years old. And that's where your belief system about you like shut down in a sense. Not necessarily like shut down, but didn't have that belief within yourself.
Anyone else want to say anything or have questions? Yes.
When you're going, when you're gonna have new clients, what do they need to know before coming to you? Like, for example, most healing is not a pain-free experience. So understand, there's going to probably be physical pain, emotional pain, experiences you experience where you don't want to revisit, but you have to. That's part of the healing. So it's not just the physical healing, like Vanessa said and Teresa said, it's the whole pie. It's the emotional, it's the physical, it's everything. So
So your question again was?
I understand it, you understand. Is the healing a pain-free experience? What kind of pains are typical for people going through the healing process?
What kind of pains are typical for people going through a healing process?
Yeah.
Emotional pain, mental pain, whatever is going on with them. It's like everybody has their own pain issues. Sometimes it's physical, but a lot of times the physical has a lot of emotions attached to it, which is why it's coming out. You could have seen a lot of people dying, and that was painful. And if you don't deal with it, it's going to show up in pain in your body. Somewhere along the way, you're going to have pain, and you might not be able. Or if you have a hard time moving, it might be you have a hard time moving forward because you're going through a grief process of something. It's like, this person meant so much to me, and now they're not here. I don't know how to live without them, and now you're in pain because you've grown up in a certain way, and you've learned certain things depending on your generation. Men are supposed to be dominant, and women are supposed to be submissive, all these traditional roles, and that might not be where you are today. And so you have to move forward. Many times, not in my mom died before my dad, but most of the times men die before women. So women are left alone going, well, what am I supposed to do now? My husband was the one that took care of finances. I actually know somebody who was in his 80s, and he and I were talking several years ago. He goes, Teresa, my wife will not sit down with me to do finances. And I said, well, God help her if you die first. Because she's not going to know what to do with the finances. She's not going to know what to do with the investments. She doesn't have good math. In fact, he said, I had to get my own P.O. box so I could get bills, so I could pay them, and they wouldn't go in the drawer, because he was getting notices from the IRS, and he never got the mail, and so he got his own post office box so he could get them. I thought, man, this is really disastrous. So you never know what the pain is that you're dealing with, and as a shaman, I dig in and I tell you, this is where your pain is located, what's going on there, and usually a story will come out. And sometimes I use a spiritual entity, sometimes the power animal will show up for me. And I'll tell this person, I go, this animal showed up for me. Does this mean anything? And they tell a whole big story about an animal that showed up. One lady, I said, a wolf showed up. I said, do you resonate with wolves? She goes, oh yeah, my daughter and I would go up to the wolf refuge all the time. I don't know, okay. Another one was a bald eagle. There's a bald eagle person, oh yeah, that's my spiritual one. I'm like, okay. It's like, things show up and they resonate with people. I can't tell you why, but it's like, I'll say, okay, send me whatever spirit guide I need, and it'll show up. And usually it always resonates with the person I'm working with. So, have you had that experience?
All the time.
Yeah, all the time. And then just in general, after a session, people might experience anything from a cold to a headache to an instant need for a cat nap or a 12-hour nap. Who knows? Symptoms of release, like right in the session, is yawning. I encourage and love when people start yawning. That's a form of release. Sneezing, farting, burping, eyes dripping, or tears. And people always say, I'm sorry, I'll stop. And I'm like, no, let that go. That's part of the release process. People start to see some of the emotions that they've released, and they come and kind of rear their head, especially like the anger family or grief, and you just acknowledge them and state, I've released you, thank you, and they kind of just float away. Don't let them own you because you've let them go, and it's time to move forward. I tell people when I do their whole process, I take all these notes, but I don't let them dwell in it. I tell them to, if it's on paper, tear it up, just get rid of it. If it's a email form that I sent over, delete it. Once you've kind of looked at it and digested it, you delete it. You don't dwell on the stuff you've released. And you know, these symptoms that you experience are usually 1 to 3 days as the body's integrating and healing and moving forward. You just don't dwell on it, let it go. But you'll experience pain symptoms because the body is letting go of stuff, and that's its communicator, like, I don't know, I've held on to this for so long. Those are all things that, you know, come up, but they pass. And so people are like, oh, well, the session didn't really work. And then a week later, they've, you know, made profound shifts. You know, they feel amazing, or they were trying to launch a business and all of a sudden they have 10 new clients. You know, it's all sorts of stuff, and they kind of just have to watch and see, but things change and shift in their due time. So, yeah.
Yeah, what Vanessa is talking about is you're releasing toxins. So when you release toxins, then maybe a headache or a flu or whatever comes to you. Yeah. Last year I was at a health fair, and this lady did a intuitive drawing on me, and she said, a lot of water's coming up. And so of course I'm always blowing my nose. I'm like, oh, well that makes sense. You know, water's coming out or something. Or when I'm cooking a lot, I'll be blowing my nose. I'm like, I have no idea. Running water gives me more water, you know. So I just thought it was interesting that she saw all of that and going, okay, so what does that mean in the long run? I don't know. So anyway, I haven't really unpacked all those details, but it shows up when it needs to. So, anything else anyone wants to say or have a question about it? Well, thank you.
Healing process.
Right. Sign up for a healing process. That would be lovely. So, thank you. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Vanessa. This is Trevor.